Breaking developments out of Los Angeles tonight. Multiple ICE planes have reportedly departed from L.A.X. as part of an ongoing deportation operation. Across the country, deportation flights are accelerating. Hundreds of individuals with final removal orders are being escorted onto planes daily, and estimates indicate that Los Angeles has now become a major hub in this nationwide push. These are not routine transfers. What's unfolding at L.A.X. is a large-scale enforcement drive, with planes reportedly departing back-to-back, carrying individuals with final removal orders to Mexico, Central America, and other destinations. In this video, we'll look at how many deportations are taking place each week, where these flights are heading, and why the debate over these operations continues to intensify. And before we continue, if you want to stay updated on these fast-moving developments, make sure you subscribe and follow along for the latest reports. According to multiple reports and eyewitness accounts, several unmarked ICE buses were spotted entering the restricted side of Los Angeles International Airport late into the night. Security around the area appeared tighter than usual, with federal officers and airport police positioned near the perimeter. Witnesses described how groups of individuals, reportedly those with final deportation orders, were taken off the buses and escorted in small clusters toward the waiting aircraft. The operation moved at a steady pace, buses arriving one after another, each transfer carefully coordinated. What stood out to many was the scale. Instead of a routine, small transport, the movement of multiple buses and the use of chartered planes suggested something larger was underway. Operations reportedly continued for hours, with flights preparing to depart to Mexico, Central America, and potentially other destinations. While officials have not released detailed figures yet, the way this operation unfolded has raised questions. Was this part of a one-time sweep, or is Los Angeles now becoming a central hub in the government's broader deportation effort? While officials have yet to release an exact count, early indications suggest this may have been one of the busiest nights for deportation flights out of Los Angeles. Sources familiar with the operation described an unusually high volume of activity, with multiple buses and back-to-back flights departing through the night. The precise number of individuals placed on those planes has not been confirmed, but by all accounts it's higher than what is typically seen here. And when that figure is revealed, it may come as a surprise. Now, to understand the scale of what happened, it's important to know how these operations usually unfold. Deportation flights don't operate like standard commercial travel. They follow a very controlled and secure process. Individuals scheduled for removal are first transported in groups, often by bus, from detention centers to the airport. These buses are typically escorted under tight security, sometimes even arriving in convoys. Once at the airport, they are moved to restricted areas that the public rarely sees, secure sections of the airfield set aside specifically for ICE operations. There, the process is methodical. Names are verified, paperwork is checked, and detainees are prepared for transport. After that, they're escorted directly onto charter planes, aircraft contracted by the government for these missions. These planes don't follow the usual passenger routes. Instead, they're often scheduled at off-peak hours, departing quietly, sometimes late at night, sometimes just before dawn. The destinations also vary. A large share of flights head to Mexico and Central American countries like Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. But depending on the cases, there are also flights that reach South America, the Caribbean, and in certain situations, even further overseas. In short, these flights are designed to move large groups efficiently, under strict control, and away from public attention, which is why reports of multiple planes leaving back-to-back from Los Angeles in a single night stand out as unusual, and raise questions about just how many people were put on board. According to various estimates, based on ICE's nationwide pace of removals, California alone is reportedly seeing between 160 and 200 deportations every single day. That adds up to well over 1,000 people sent out of the state in the course of a single week. These are not official tallies, but they closely reflect what observers have been noting at major airports like Los Angeles International, where multiple buses and chartered planes have been departing in quick succession. To put those numbers in perspective, California appears to be carrying a larger share of deportations than almost any other state in the country. This is partly because of its size, but also because many detainees are processed through facilities in Southern California before being flown out. The bulk of flights are said to head toward Mexico and Central America, with additional routes sometimes extending further south. For many, the scale of this is striking. A single day's worth of deportations in California can be equivalent to what smaller states see in an entire week. And when those daily figures are added together over the course of a month, the total easily surpasses several thousand. All indications suggest that the pace here is not slowing down. If anything, it appears to be accelerating in step with ICE's nationwide crackdown. And it isn't just the flights themselves that are drawing attention. It's the sudden surge in fresh arrests across California in the past couple of weeks. Reportedly, ICE enforcement teams have been carrying out far more workplace inspections, traffic stops, and targeted sweeps in neighborhoods known for housing migrant communities. According to various reports, dozens of people have been picked up in just a single operation, with entire groups transported directly to holding centers before being scheduled onto removal flights. In places like Los Angeles, San Diego, and the Central Valley, community groups say they have noticed a sharp rise in detentions compared to the earlier months of the year. Observers point out that this uptick is not random. Rather, it appears to be part of a broader push, with California serving as one of the focal points. The timing is also critical. Over the past 2 weeks, the number of arrests has reportedly spiked so quickly that some legal aid organizations say they are struggling to keep up with the demand from families trying to contact relatives who have been detained. This pattern suggests that ICE is not only removing large numbers of people who were already in custody, but is actively expanding the pool of new arrests to feed into the deportation system. In effect, the enforcement pipeline in California is running at full speed, from street-level detentions to the steady stream of outbound flights. Observers note that while arrests and deportations are accelerating, the process is far from smooth. According to various estimates, ICE has been running into mounting challenges in California, both logistical and legal. In the past several days, reports suggest that overcrowding in detention facilities has forced authorities to delay transfers and, in some cases, temporarily hold detainees in makeshift locations until beds open up. At the same time, legal hurdles remain significant. California's long-standing sanctuary policies mean that local law enforcement often does not cooperate directly with federal immigration agents. This lack of coordination reportedly slows down operations, especially in urban areas where local authorities maintain a strict hands-off stance. As a result, ICE teams are said to be relying more heavily on field operations, surveillance, and direct arrests at workplaces or homes. Efforts that are more resource-intensive and risky. There are also signs of strain inside ICE itself. Officers in California have reportedly raised concerns about staffing shortages, with the current pace of enforcement stretching their capacity. Transportation bottlenecks, from securing charter flights to coordinating removals across state lines, have added another layer of complication. Taken together, these issues illustrate why, despite the apparent surge in activity, enforcement in California is unfolding under pressure. Observers say this tug-of-war between federal agencies pushing harder and local constraints resisting just as strongly is shaping how the next phase of arrests and deportations will play out. While ICE has stepped up its operations in California, Democratic leaders in the state have moved quickly to push back against what they describe as an overly aggressive crackdown. In Sacramento, several Democratic lawmakers have criticized the scale and speed of the recent arrests, warning that it is destabilizing entire neighborhoods. They argue that local economies and community safety are being undermined when families are suddenly separated. A number of legislators have begun pressing for state-funded legal defense expansion, saying California needs to step in where federal protections are lacking. In Los Angeles and San Francisco, city officials have doubled down on their sanctuary city commitments. Mayors have instructed local law enforcement not to cooperate with federal immigration raids, except in extreme criminal cases. According to local reports, hotlines have been overwhelmed by residents calling in to report raids and ask for legal advice. Many of those hotlines are run by Democratic-backed nonprofits and city programs. At the federal level, Democratic members of Congress from California, including high-profile figures, have demanded hearings into ICE's conduct. Some members of Congress have accused the administration of deliberately targeting California because of its political stance on immigration. There are also renewed calls for the Department of Justice to review whether ICE is overstepping its authority during traffic stops and workplace inspections. Community-based Democratic groups have taken to the streets as well. In the last several days, there have been small but growing protests outside detention centers in places like Adelanto and Bakersfield, where families have been gathering with signs reading, "Stop the raids," and "Families belong together." These demonstrations, though not massive, signal a rising wave of resistance being encouraged by Democratic organizers and advocacy networks. This Democratic resistance reflects the views of most Californians. Polls show that about 63% of adults and 62% of likely voters want state and local governments to create their own protections for undocumented immigrants, even if that means going against federal law. In short, many Californians believe local communities should have the power to shield immigrants from ICE. That's why ICE out of California messaging remains strong, not just from politicians, but also from grassroots groups and residents who see this as an issue of local control, safety, and independence from Washington. On the specific question of mass deportations, Californians lean against the idea. An Emerson College survey found 56% of voters believe mass deportations would harm the state, compared to 44% who see them as beneficial. A UC Irvine poll showed even stronger opposition, with nearly 60% favoring a pathway to legal status and only 1/3 supporting mass removals. Overall, while some still push for stricter enforcement, a larger share of Californians view mass deportations as disruptive, preferring reforms that keep families together and focus on legal solutions. However, nationwide, surveys show strong support for mass deportations, with many Americans backing the idea as a way to tackle illegal immigration. But California tells a different story. Here, opposition is far stronger, with most people favoring alternatives over large-scale removals. This split highlights a major divide. While much of the country leans toward tougher enforcement, California remains resistant to the sweeping scope of mass deportation plans. Looking ahead, ICE enforcement in California is expected to intensify, with more deportation flights scheduled from L.A.X. and other major airports, potentially carrying hundreds of residents each week. At the same time, state lawmakers are preparing legal challenges to limit what they view as federal overreach, while sanctuary city policies continue to restrict local cooperation. Community organizations and hotlines are ramping up support for affected families, and small protests outside detention centers are likely to grow, signaling rising grassroots resistance. Experts warn that this ongoing clash between federal enforcement and California's opposition could set the stage for a long-term legal and political struggle, shaping the future of immigration policy both in the state and nationwide. Right now, the Trump administration is stepping up deportation efforts across California, targeting undocumented immigrants, especially those involved in criminal activity. These measures reflect a broader push by the administration to show tough enforcement on illegal immigration, even as they face legal and logistical challenges. If you want to get the latest updates on immigration enforcement and deportation news, like, share, and subscribe for similar updates. Thanks for watching.